Hello everyone, viewers. We all think we know the story. It's etched into the bedrock of Western civilization. In the beginning, there was a garden, a man named Adam, and from his rib, a woman named Eve, the first couple, the parents of all humanity. But what if I told you that story, the one you've heard 1,000 times, has a missing page? A character deliberately torn from the script, a name whispered only in the shadow. Her name was Lilith, and her story wasn't just forgotten, it was intentionally erased. The question is, why? Why was the memory of the true first woman so dangerous that it had to be buried for millennia? To find the answer, we must go back, not just to the beginning of Genesis, but to the silence between its verses. The official account is clean, concise. God forms Adam from the dust. God declares, "It is not good that the man should be alone." And so, while Adam sleeps, he takes a rib and fashions Eve. She is bone of his bones, flesh of his flesh, a helper, a companion, a beautiful, simple story of divine matchmaking. But ancient Jewish traditions, texts that predate and run parallel to the canonical Bible, tell a different tale. They speak of a first attempt, a draft one of creation. At the very same moment, from the very same clay, he created a woman. Her name was Lilith. Imagine the scene, two beings waking up to consciousness under the brilliant, unfiltered light of a brand new world. They are not creator and creation, not original and derivative. They are twins of the dust, mirror images formed by the same divine hands. Adam looks at Lilith, and for the first time in existence he sees not a sub-perfect equality. For a time, Eden was a paradise of two. They walked among the glowing trees, named the beasts of the field together, and drank from the pristine waters of its 4 rivers. There was no hierarchy, no talk of submission. There was only the shared wonder of being the first, the pioneers of existence itself. But paradise is a fragile thing, and the seeds of conflict are a disagreement that would echo through the ages, becoming a metaphor for a struggle that continues to this day. The conflict arose from intimacy, from the very act of union. Adam, asserting a sense of primacy he felt was his birthright, insisted that Lilith lie beneath him. It was, in his mind, the natural order. He was the first named, the template. She should defer. Her reply, as recorded in the medieval text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, was a thunderclap that shattered the peace of Eden forever. She said, "Why must I lie beneath you? I also was made from dust, and am therefore your equal." Think about the sheer audacity, the revolutionary power of that statement in the context of creation. It wasn't just a rejection of a physical position, it was a rejection of She wasn't arguing for superiority, she was arguing for parity. She looked at the soil they came from, the hands that made them, the air they breathed, and saw no difference, no justification for one to be above the other. Adam was stunned. This was not a helper. This was a rival. He argued, he cajoled, he commanded, he likely invoked God's will, the unspoken order of things. But Lilith, the garden, once a sanctuary of shared discovery, became a battleground of wills. Every glance was a challenge, every conversation a negotiation of power. Adam grew resentful, his loneliness returning even in her presence. He felt his authority, an authority he hadn't even realized he'd assumed, being questioned at its very root. He prayed to God, complaining that the woman he had given him was rebellious. And Lilith, seeing that her partner would not see her, that her creator would not intervene on behalf of the equality he himself had forged, and that her home was becoming a prison of expectation, made a choice, a terrifying, liberating choice. She did the unthinkable. In the heart of Eden, amidst the sacred and the new, she uttered the ineffable name of God, the secret, holy name of the Almighty. Power coursed through her, the power of the name itself, and she was granted flight. She rose from the ground, leaving a stunned and furious Adam standing alone among the perfect trees. She flew past the walls of paradise, leaving behind the only life she had ever known. She didn't just leave Adam. She left the garden, she left the entire divine experiment. It was an act of ultimate defiance, a severing of all ties. Her destination was the desolate, windswept shores of the Red Sea in ancient lore. This was a place of chaos, a liminal space haunted by spirits and demons, far from the ordered sanctity of Eden. This is where she made her new home, a queen in a kingdom of desolation, But God does not let go of his creation so easily. The order of Eden had been disrupted. Adam was alone and miserable. The woman you gave me has run away. So God dispatched a heavenly rescue mission, or perhaps an enforcement squad. He sent 3 of his mightiest angels, Sinoi, Sansinoi, and Samangeloff, with a message and an ultimatum. The 3 angels soared across the world, their divine light cutting through the mortal darkness until they found her on the shores of the chaotic sea. The confrontation, the pristine, radiant messengers of heaven facing the first rebel, her eyes reflecting the wild freedom of her new home. They delivered God's decree, return to Adam at once. If you refuse, we will let 100 of your children die every day. This was the turning point, the moment Lilith was forced to choose between her principles and her progeny, because by this time, in her wild freedom, Lilith had become a mother. What would you do? Return to a life of subjugation to save your children, or stand by your freedom and watch them perish? The angel's threat was not an idle one, it was a divine curse. Lilith looked at the angels, emissaries of the God who had created her equal, and then stood by while that equality was denied. And in that moment, her defiance crystallized into an unbreakable vow. She refused. She told them she could not go back. In her grief and rage, she made a counter-vow, an oath of vengeance. She swore that if she was to be the slayer of her own children by her choice, then she would be a terror to the children of Adam. She would attack human infants, boys up to the 8th day of life, the day of circumcision, and girls up to the 20th day. Her pain would be visited upon the world that had rejected her. The only exception, she conceded, would be for those children protected by an amulet bearing the names of the 3 very angels who delivered her sentence: Sinoi, Sansinoi, and Samangeloff. And so the bargain was struck. The angels left, their mission a failure. Lilith remained in her exile, forever transformed. She was no longer just the first woman. She was a storm of rage and grief raging against the shores of creation. The curse took hold. Every day 100 of her children died, and every day her heart hardened further. Her legend as a demon of the night began to grow. She became the specter that haunts the birthing room, the shadow that steals the breath of newborns. The woman who demanded equality became the monster who preyed on the innocent. It was the perfect narrative for back in Eden. The Lilith problem was solved. She was gone, but Adam's loneliness remained, perhaps now even more acute. The silence of the garden was heavier than before, so God tried again, but this time he changed the formula. He wouldn't make the same mistake of creating an equal who could challenge the established order. This time the design would be different. He caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and when Adam awoke, he saw her, and the words he spoke are telling. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Her name was Eve. Unlike Lilith, her very origin was rooted in Adam. She was not from the same earth, a separate and equal creation. She was of him. From him, her existence was a testament to his primacy. The hierarchy that Lilith fought against was, and the story could now proceed as we know it. Adam and Eve, the serpent, the apple, the fall from grace. It is a powerful and profound story, but it is a story that only works, that can only be told, if you first erase the woman who came before. If you remove the precedent of the rebel, the memory of the one who said no. This story of Lilith, so vibrant and shocking, is not. Its most complete and famous telling is in the alphabet of Ben Sira, a satirical, anonymous Jewish text from the Middle Ages, somewhere between the 8th and 10th centuries. But the roots of Lilith are far, far older. They stretch back into the mists of ancient Mesopotamia. Before she was Adam's wife, she was a figure in Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian mythology. She was a Lilitu, a class of an epic poem. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, mentions a Kisikil Lil-Lay-K, a maiden of desolation who lives in the trunk of a sacred tree. She is a creature of the wild, untamable, a spirit of the untamed natural world. When the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon in the 6th century BCE, they encountered these stories culture. The myths of the conquerors become the folklore of the conquered. This Mesopotamian wind demon, this spirit of the night, seems to have merged with a brewing Jewish theological problem. The problem lay in the very first chapter of Genesis. If you read carefully, Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 present two slightly different creation accounts. Genesis 1:27 states, "So God created mankind in his own image." This verse strongly implies a simultaneous creation, two equal beings from the start. But then, Genesis chapter 2 gives us the more famous story of Adam being created first, alone, and Eve being formed later from his rib. For centuries, rabbis and scholars puzzled over this discrepancy. How could both be true? Was it a contradiction, or were they describing two different events? The legend of Lilith provides Eve was the woman from Genesis 2, created from his rib. Lilith was the first draft, the one who didn't work out, the one who had to be replaced. The story harmonized the two conflicting texts, but it did so by creating a powerful and dangerous archetype, the disobedient first wife. Her name even makes a cryptic, solitary appearance in the canonical Bible itself. In Isaiah 34-14, a prophecy describing the utter desolation that will befall the land of Edom, the King James Version reads, "The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of Thea's land, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest." That term, screech owl, is Many modern scholars and translations now render the word directly, so the verse reads, "And there Lilith shall repose and find for herself a place of rest." A single ghostly footprint in the official scripture, a hint of a much larger story lurking just out of sight. So why the erasure? Why was this compelling and theologically sophisticated story relegated to the margins, to folklore and mystical texts? As early Judaism and later Christianity evolved, they became increasingly patriarchal societies. The leadership roles in religion and society were codified as exclusively male. In this context, the story of Lilith was more than just a myth, it was a threat. She was a narrative of female autonomy. A woman who was not given to man, but created alongside him. A woman who refused to submit, who challenged male authority, who walked away from a paradise that did not recognize her as an equal, and who, even when threatened by God himself, chose her own freedom. Such a figure is a dangerous role model in a society built on female submission. Eve, on the other hand, was the perfect model for a patriarchal society. She was created from Adam, and her punishment, as laid out in Genesis 3:16, was to be subservient to her husband. "Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." The message was clear. The fate of a disobedient woman is to be ruled by man. The story of Eve reinforces the patriarchal structure. The story of Lilith shatters it. This story has been systematically suppressed for thousands of years. If you are finding this journey into the forgotten chapters of history as fascinating as I am, and you want to uncover more truths that challenge what we think we know, then take a moment to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. We're just scratching the surface, and you won't want to miss the revelations to come. By supporting the channel, you help us keep digging for these buried narratives. So, to maintain her admirable qualities, her independence, her courage, her intelligence, her insistence on equality, had to be reframed as monstrous vices. Her independence became demonic rebellion, her confidence became arrogance, her sexuality, which she owned and controlled, became predatory and dangerous. She was cast as the mother of all demons, the succubus who preys on men in their sleep, stealing their life. She became the embodiment of everything a patriarchal society feared in a woman: untamed sexuality, sharp intellect, and a refusal to be controlled. The storytellers of the ages took the first woman and turned her into the first witch, a cautionary tale whispered to girls for generations. Don't be like Lilith, be like Eve, be obedient, be gentle, be a helper, or you too will be cast out into the archetype of Lilith, the rebellious, sexually liberated, powerful woman as a demonic entity, fueled centuries of fear and persecution. It can be seen in the fervor of the medieval witch hunts, where women who were independent, who were healers, who lived outside the norms of society, were accused of consorting with the devil and put to death. They were, in a sense, the daughters of Lilith, paying the price for the same. The fear of Lilith was the fear of female power unleashed and uncontrolled. Her erasure from the primary scriptures and her transformation into a monster was a profound act of narrative control designed to shape society by shaping its foundational myths. But stories are resilient things. They can be buried, but they rarely die. And in the 20th and 21st centuries, Lilith began to rise from her mythology. As the feminist movement gained momentum, women began searching for new stories, new icons that reflected their own struggles for equality. They looked back into the dusty corners of mythology and folklore, and they found her. They found the story of the woman who said no, and they didn't see a demon. They saw a hero. Lilith was reclaimed. She was resurrected, not as a screech owl or a baby killer. She became a feminist icon, the original liberated woman. Her refusal to lie beneath Adam was reinterpreted as the ultimate act of resistance against patriarchal domination. Her flight from Eden was not an act of petulance, but a courageous journey towards self-realization. She chose the terrifying freedom of the wilderness over the gilded cage of paradise. This modern reclamation had the Lilith Fair, a massive touring music festival in the 1990s, featuring only female solo artists and female-led bands, chose its name deliberately. It was a celebration of the very female creativity and power that the Lilith myth had been used to suppress. She has become a powerful symbol for those who feel marginalized or silenced by traditional religious narratives. For them, she represents the idea that one can have a spiritual life without surrendering one's personal autonomy and equality. She asks the uncomfortable questions: was Eden truly a paradise? If it required the submission of half its population, is a divinely ordained order just if it is inherently unequal? This brings us to the core of the issue, the reason her story remains so potent and controversial today. Was her temptation by the serpent really the first sin? Or was the first sin Adam's refusal to accept Lilith as his equal? Was the original fall from grace not about eating a forbidden fruit, but about the failure of the first man to embrace a world built on partnership instead of hierarchy? The story of Lilith suggests that the problems of humanity, the struggle between the sexes, the thirst for domination, they began with a simple, devastating disagreement in the heart of paradise. Her legacy is complex and contradictory. To some, she remains a demon, a dark figure from the Kabbalistic underworld, a genuine threat to piety and order. Her name is still used on amulets to ward off evil. To others, she is the ultimate symbol of liberation, a proto-feminist hero who paid an unbearable price for her freedom. She resists simple categorization. She is a messy, complicated, and utterly human figure. Despite her mythological origins, she reflects the uncomfortable truths that we often prefer to ignore. The truth that equality is a struggle, that freedom has a cost, and that the stories we choose to tell and the ones we choose to erase define who we are. Think about the two paths presented by. She is the mother of all humanity, the ancestral vessel through which the story of salvation in Christian theology will eventually unfold. Her story is one of mistake, punishment, and eventual grace within the system. Lilith's path is one of permanent exile. She operates outside the system entirely. She finds no redemption, no forgiveness. Instead, she finds a different kind of power, a wild, untamed. She represents a road not taken, a version of humanity that chose a different destiny. So what are we to make of her? Is her story a historical truth, a genuine memory of a pre-biblical matriarchal religion that was violently suppressed? Or is it a purely literary invention, a clever rabbinic tool to explain a textual inconsistency in Genesis? Does it matter? The power of a myth does not lie. The story of Lilith holds a mirror up to our world. It reveals our deep-seated anxieties about female power. It exposes our ongoing struggles with equality. It questions the very foundations of the social and religious structures we have built. It reminds us that history is written by the victors, and that the first casualty of any ideological war is the story of the vanquished. Lilith was vanquished. Her story was deemed, but the shadow is where interesting things grow. By casting her out, the storytellers inadvertently gave her a different kind of immortality. she became the queen of the shadow realm, the embodiment of everything the orderly, patriarchal world rejected. She represents the subconscious, the repressed, the wild feminine that cannot be tamed by dogma or law. She is the voice that whispers, "What if there is another way?" The very act, the more you try to silence a voice, the more resonant its echoes become. Her story is a profound lesson in the power of narrative. The people who control the stories control the world. For millennia, the story was that woman was created from man for man, and that her purpose was to be his helper. This story shaped laws, societies, and the inner lives of billions of people. The story of Lilith offers a how different would our societies, our relationships, our very understanding of gender and power be? We can never know, but the fact that we can now ask the question, that her story has resurfaced with such force, shows that no narrative is ever truly set in stone. Old stories can be retold, and forgotten voices can eventually be heard. Lilith stands as a timeless archetype of the rebel. She is Prometheus who stole fire. Her rebellion was about demanding to be seen. It was about the simple, radical claim to her own equal worth, and for that, she was branded a monster. It's a chilling reminder of how often, throughout history, the people who simply demand to be treated as fully human have been demonized by the powerful. Her story is not just an ancient myth, it is a recurring pattern. Every time a woman speaks out against an unjust system, so the next time you hear the story of the Garden of Eden, remember the ghost. Remember the woman made of the same earth, the one who looked Adam in the eye and saw not a master, but a partner. Remember the one who was given a choice between paradise and her principles and chose her principles. Whether you see her as a demon of the night, a tragic figure of defiance, or a feminist hero, her story cannot be ignored. She is the question mark that hangs over the paradise lost. A permanent reminder that before the fall there was a schism, and it was a battle not over knowledge, but over equality. Alright, that is all for today's video. We've journeyed from the dawn of creation to the folklore of the ancient world and into the heart of modern rebellion. The story of Lilith is a testament to the power of hidden histories. If you liked this video and it helps the channel immensely and ensures these forgotten tales find a new audience. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.